So, I got quite a bit of attention with this video. All from a lot of the perspectives, both from a genuine to a satirical sentiment or downright ignorant takes. So I think that's something I feel needs to be looked into as a separate video. Get a chance to look at others' perspective of this episode and whether or not they make a valid point. So let's dive into some of these comments, shall we? Just don't try to harass these individuals for their opinions if you do not agree with them. This is only used for critical analysis and to give a broader perspective of Speckle's situation in Tuca and Bertie, more specifically, in a very Speckle day.
I hate Bertie. People say it's a female sexual abused surrogate icon, but she is a hypocrite toxic person. In one episode, she threw out her boyfriend cause he didn't defend her, but we have an entire series of Tuca treating Speckle like Bertie is not a person that wants true healing of her wounds. She is toxic, idolizing people. And then when they fail her very miserable and toxic mindset of the world, she blames them and puts them in her clusterfuck of abusers and hypocrites. She is wonderfully written, but not as a good flawed character, but as a toxic person.
This is actually funny from a user named Gay Statue. But this is definitely going to be something we should definitely discuss. Now, when it comes to Bertie and Speckle's relationship, it definitely isn't perfect by any means. However, is this considered a toxic relationship? Or Bertie is toxic in general? I personally don't believe that. Reason being is that the two of them are very communicative and express one's concern over the other's behavior. While yes, Speckle has been left high and dry on a lot of occasions throughout the series, I don't believe it's just to be crap to Speckle. As a matter of fact, I think that Bertie witnessing her actions affecting Speckle negatively does fill her with genuine guilt. We have to remember that Bertie was molested as a child, so her thought process when it comes to men in general is understandable. I don't know what it's like to be sexually abused, especially at the age of 12. That kind of stuff sticks with you for the rest of your life. I do think they need to focus on Tuca's issue with Speckle more seriously at some point if this series continues. That I agree with. But I don't believe it's necessarily Bertie's job to figure out why Tuca feels some type of way with him. Plus, Tuca has shown tolerance with Speckle when they do interact when Bertie isn't around. Heck, Speckle does become her support as well from time to time, which does give a sense of growth. They can tolerate one another, and Tuca isn't actively trying to split the two up. Heck, her relationship with Vicky should probably help strengthen that bond. If Vicky gets over his traumatic realization that Speckle was fishing as his girlfriend for one episode.
Speckle, you're so good at impressions.
Cliff isn't an incel. He's a misogynist.
So this one I had a little bit of an intercourse with. So in this video, I did call Cliff an incel for his comments against Bertie in his final scene and how he uses his spare time to fondle with mannequins at a clothing store. This person obviously thinks I'm wrong on this statement, and when I responded with interchangeable, I may or may not have ticked him off a little bit, going on to say that men who attract women are also misogynistic and that Cliff is being misrepresented here. So looking back at this comment thread, I truly think that our friend here thought that I believe misogynistic and incel are interchangeable words, which isn't what I was intending. When I made that interchangeable comment, I meant that when it comes to Cliff in particular, and basically other incels like him, that it does become interchangeable. You are correct that incels are not the only ones who can be misogynistic. However, from what I have seen and experienced when interacting with incels, I believe that all incels are misogynists. Even the dictionary definition states, a person, usually a man, who regards himself or herself as being involuntarily celibate and typically expresses extreme resentment and hostility towards those who are sexually active. Even looking at the quotes that Merriam gives further proves that point. Josh O'Kane states, the term incels emerged from a Reddit group in which tens and thousands of users, most of them young men, commiserate about their lack of sexual activity, many of them placing blame on women. And Julie Bozeman states, in recent years, a number of these men have identified as so-called incels, short for involuntary celibates, an online subculture of men who expresses rage at women for denying them sex. So I'm gonna repeat, how in what universe is comparing your friend's girlfriend to your mother and humping mannequins does not equal a high level of incel tendencies? Plus, Cliff is clearly meant to be a one-off character. I don't think we're going to see him again outside of maybe a cameo, so this whole thought of him being misrepresented is a silly one because he's not a character that will be remembered in the long run. Also, why are you guys thinking that Tuca doesn't get punished for her actions, when she literally got punished in the same episode when she had a fling with an annoying bunny who unceremoniously dumped her at the end? Like, what?
I honestly hate every time a show decides to include an incel, because most of the time it's the same men who complain about women are all sexists losers. And, to be honest, to put the only man who was willing to listen to Speckle to be an ink only enforces how many times this show present men as more of villains with no more dimension than that. Honestly, Speckle should have broken up with Bertie long ago, considering all the shit he has to handle every season while getting little in return, and this episode did little to nothing to show me otherwise. You hope Speckle gets better later on, but, considering this show is so feminist, I don't think that will happen soon.
I mean, there are plenty of males in the show, and not all of them are villain-like. Dapper Dog hasn't been rude to women from what I recall. Big Hairy Stallion 69 is an awesome dude who people may have forgotten about to be one of Speckle's close friends. Would love to see him more. Thomas Ockbird has a fun personality, Jamie is a sweetheart, and don't forget about Vicky and Speckle as well. There are plenty of men characters that are decent. So this claim that they are all men meant to be villainized is not true. Not to mention Kara, and for a moment Winter Garcia, did play the more villain-like role at some points of the show. Even with all of that, the show is targeted for a women demographic. Heck, the Tuca and Bertie related videos I did show that. It's not a show's job to represent every perspective each time a character is introduced. I came to the show understanding that this was a show that expresses the issues of women's equality while also exposing that women have flaws also. As I mentioned, I don't think you were supposed to consider Tuca or Bertie to be perfect. There were plenty of times where both were in the wrong on some occasions. I feel Greg's belief is due to the fogginess created by his belief that feminism is meaning that women should have more power overall, which brings up the next talking point.
Whether you like the owl or not, he was right about feminism having its limits.
This comment makes me want to bash my head against the wall. Fellas, hear me out. Feminism does not mean women should be privileged. Too many times have I seen people have this thought that a majority of feminists want to be pampered and have a luxurious life while men have to duke it out for the scraps. So many times women get dogged on for expressing themselves a certain way or ask for some sort of respect from their male counterparts. This idea that feminism is a movement aimed on taking all the advantages that society has to offer is very ridiculous because it ignores the main issues that inequality in general is the biggest issue. Feminism is simply the equal rights between genders. It's about women having equal footing to men in society. When I hear people say this sentiment that feminism has limits, I assume they mean that women only use this out of convenience. It can happen, but expect women to only use that card when someone challenges them is not expressing the equal footing. Instead of thinking of it as a person simply asking if their partner has the check covered, some people want to see this as the traditional route and call women hypocrites for not having an equality mindset when paying a bill for dinner. Which is pretty weird if you ask me, especially when you barely know the couple and their entire relationship together. I'm gonna be real. I'm not gonna read this last comment because Sam wrote an entire dissertation of what Speckle should have done to obtain his dream apartment for the lower class. Especially when it comes to him being very political in this particular comment. Starting it off with the one time I agree with communists. Which is cute. You probably think that because I say comrade when I want to troll people. To sum his point up though, basically Speckle should have that dog in him. Show how valuable he is to the company and be stern and threaten to walk out and make the manager look silly in front of those in the higher ladder. Even criticize her bad leadership and take away the privileges he has given her during his time there. While that is something to do on paper, she's still the boss, my dog. In this day and age, a large percent of the working class is seen as easily replaceable. You think Speckle is the only employee who can buy the manager coffee or give her solid ideas? Hell, the end of the episode shows that he can easily be fired and the project can be continued on without him. You're right that the nice guy doesn't get treated fairly compared to everyone else, but trying to be stern and passive aggressive can get you the boot too. People can get fired for the dumbest things, and companies can get away with that because of the severe lack of unions in this country as a whole. So while this may be a communist take in your eyes, Sam, I believe that being the one talented individual in the profession is not going to be enough to put you over most of the time. However, I do think a group of talented individuals in that field coming together and starting an organized union to help not only themselves have a better opportunity in their field, but everyone involved in the workplace, even in Bird, California. Well, that's all I got when it comes to the responses of takes that certainly caught my eye. I know these are more on the negative side of the show. However, I do think it's important to counter some of these points because I do believe that they do miss the point of what the episode was used for. This is the first time we see Speckle in this amount of stress for an entire episode. The ways in how easily a manosphere mindset can grab a hold of you mentally. Finally, how powerful the capitalist mindset can be and how easy it can take away everything you built in one fell swoop. It's important to be open about your ideologies and understand where a show is coming from. As a reviewer and analyzer, I can admit that it can be difficult to remove any biases you have while watching a show. But it can be done, and you can get a lot more out of it when you have an open perspective. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.